Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull, and in today's video, we'll be covering Tennessee's big orange and white game coming up tomorrow at 1 p.m. on SEC Network Plus. We'll be talking about what the format should look like, and we'll talk about what players we need to be looking out for. What position groups do we need to see a lot from? And we're also going to be talking about some big recruits that we'll be visiting and kind of where they're at in their process. But after this, just as far as, actual football stuff, we won't be having a whole lot of things going on until maybe like July. I don't think that we even get like video coverage of stuff like that. So things are going to kind of be slowing down here, just a taste. We still have that transfer portal, which is about to open up on Monday. So from April the 15th to the 30th, probably going to be a whole lot of stuff to talk about right there. And obviously over the summer, it's going to be a lot of people coming up on visit. And I'm expecting Tennessee to get several commitments in that period. And, we've also had the NFL draft that's coming up at the end of this month. So outside of that, if you want to see some actual Tennessee football stuff, videos of the team, film breakdowns, things like that, then please do consider becoming a member of this channel. That's a great way to help support us as we are still trying to grow this thing. And it's also a good way to continue to get your Tennessee football fix. But outside of that, please make sure to like and subscribe. Now on to the orange and white game. Number one, we have to take a look at what the format's going to be. And with this graphic right here, you can see what it was last season. And last year it was offense versus defense. It will probably be the same this season. Alternating possessions. We'll kind of talk about what that means here in just a minute. And the punts weren't live, but I don't think special teams was live, period. I think that that's a great idea. And the quarters were 15 minutes in the first half, but actually in the second half, there were 10-minute quarters with that running clock. All right, so alternating possessions just means that the first string is going to go, right? So usually it's ones versus ones, and then second string goes, then third string goes. At least that's how it was last season. So we got to see Joe Milton, Nico, and Gaston Moore all get about 6 to 7 series. I don't know if any more of the quarterbacks will play because I don't recall if they did last season, but you would hope that everyone gets an opportunity to play because their family members are probably going to be up there. And obviously you want to showcase your talents and your skill set and all that in front of your family, friends, and obviously all of Vol Nation. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Now, just talking about the special teams not being live. Okay, well, they said that the punts weren't live last season, but again, I don't think that special teams was live, period. I think that that's a great idea because special teams is a place that people tend to get injured at, and there's just no need for that, okay? Like, we don't need to see that. Maybe have somebody out there to catch the punts and things like that just to see how they're fielding it. But outside of that, I mean, we don't want to be going full contact at 30, 40, 50-yard head start. So I'm always happy to hear that. And again, with the quarters in the first half, at least last season, it was 15 minutes. And then in the second half, it looked like it was 10 minutes and it was a running clock. So it ends up going by really, really quickly. But, again, we'll probably see 6 to 7 series from each quarterback, at least in the top 3. So we're talking about this season, Nico, Gaston Moore, and then Jake Merklinger. That's going to be very exciting to see him go. Now, something else that's going to be a pretty big deal is who's going to be playing in this game, right? Who's going to be sitting out. And we don't know for sure, but we will show you who sat out last season. And while y'all are looking at that, I'll tell you who is projected to be sitting out for this season's orange and white game. And on this channel, we are expecting for Spraggs, Cooper Mays, Andre Carrick, Brew McCoy, Peyton Lewis, Elijah Herring, Masai Reddick, Arion Carter, Christian Charles, Brian Grant, and Caleb Beasley to all be sitting out of this game. But we do think that Joshua Josephs, Braylon Staley, and Ethan Davis could be out as well. All right, so us as fans hate to see those injury lists because we want to see all of our players go in the orange and white game, but it's going to be for the best, especially if the player is questionable, which means that maybe they could go, but they would have to kind of push themselves to do it. This is not the time to be trying to push yourself and get into a game, right? You do that during the season, but not in a spring game. So I'm cool with it, okay? I would love to see Braylon Staley. We've heard a lot of great things about him. We've seen him go to work in some of these practice clips and things like that, but seeing him in a live game situation would be huge. But he's a guy that I think is going to play a lot for us in the fall, so there's no need for him to push himself at this point, especially whenever you think about summer ball is where you are going to get a lot better at, and he needs those reps. He needs those summer ball reps. That's the part that I don't want for him to miss more than anything. He's had a great spring. Okay, let's let him heal up, get himself ready for summer camp and fall camp, heading into the season, and hopefully he's going to be very, very productive for us throughout this season and, throughout the next, 3 seasons at Tennessee. Now, we also talked about Ethan Davis potentially sitting out in this year's orange and white game. It said in the graphic that we showed earlier that he sat out of that game, but he played. That's the game that he got injured in, and he missed pretty much the entire season because of that injury. And don't quote me on this, but I think that every time that he's been injured since he's played dating back to high school has been in a preseason scrimmage type of deal, like what we're going to be having coming up here tomorrow. So I would say that he absolutely needs to sit out because we need him for sure. Okay, that tight end room could end up being the deepest that we've had up in Knoxville with Holden Stays and with Miles Kittleman. So we've got to make sure that Ethan Davis can stay healthy and, that he can be ready week 1 versus UT Chattanooga. Now, that just kind of leads me into, my expectations of this game. The number one thing is just going to be, let's stay healthy, okay? No injuries, especially from any of our key guys, okay, knock on wood, but you don't want to see anyone on your team ever get injured. So that's the biggest thing for me. And outside of that, it's going to be about the fundamentals, okay? It's going to be about how good are the athletes out there, right? You want to see guys playing with proper leverage, tackling well, wrapping up, running through tackles, blocking well, getting off the ball quickly, things like that, okay? That's what a spring game is going to show us is how good of athletes are we and how well trained are we. This is kind of going to be what the floor should be heading into summer. And that will be a good gauge for me as far as how far, this team can go, talking about, being a playoff team or a championship caliber team. And I just want to see a lot from the newcomers, right? Whether that's true freshmen, whether that's transfer players, you want to see them get out there and compete at a really, really high level. Now, let's talk about what to expect from the offensive line. Okay, so number one, right, we believe that the starting group is going to be at left tackle, Lance Hurd, left guard, Sham Umarov, center probably going to be Vyson Lang, right guard's probably going to be Dane Davis, and right tackle will be John Campbell if he decides to play. You would expect for that group to look really solid. Now, the main player that we're going to be looking out for in this one is going to be Vyson Lang because he's that backup center. And we heard that maybe he was struggling a taste, okay, as the backup center, but we need for him to be ready to rock and roll if he has to step in and be a starter for Cooper Mays. We're also going to be looking very closely at the left side of that offensive line. So Lance Hurd being that newcomer, how does he look versus James Pierce and, versus some of these studs on that D line? How does, Sham Umarov look playing at left guard? He's been playing a whole lot of tackle, since he came up on campus last season, but in the spring, he's been moved over to guard. I feel like he, looks comfortable there. I actually think that he could be a very natural fit. How does he look in a live game situation is going to tell us a lot. Will we find our left guard coming out of spring? Okay, that was a huge question mark coming into spring. Also, with Jackson Lampley sitting out, how do these backups look, right? Okay, like how do the second, third, fourth string guys look? It's going to be a whole lot of underclassmen, freshmen with that bunch. Do we have anyone that maybe could push to be that maybe starting left guard, or, maybe second string left guard, anything like that? That's what I'm going to be looking forward to. And I would also say that, as far as with the first string group on the offensive line, you want to see a lot more stalemates with that one. But with the second group, I would prefer to see that defensive line getting the better of them. Number one, because it's going to tell us that, hey, this defensive front is what we thought it was. And also it's going to help those younger guys get better. Okay, that's what they need. That's what it's all about for them right now is just getting as good as you possibly can and maybe positioning yourself to help us out in fall. Now, talking about that defensive line, again, with the first string, okay, you want to see a lot of, maybe kind of like stalemates, something like that. But James Pierce, you would expect for him to be pretty dominant. I would say as far as the interior goes, you want to see guys kind of plugging up gaps, things like that. Now, I think that the starting group is going to be James Pierce if he plays. On the right side, it's going to be interesting to see who starts there. I would say maybe Dominic Bailey. It could be Tyree West. It could be Tyree Weathersby. We don't know. So that's going to be very interesting to kind of see who comes out as the starter at the strong side defensive end. And I believe that the two tackles will end up being Big O and Omar Norman-Lott, but it could also be, Simmons could be thrown in there. Bryson Easton could be thrown in there. So, that's going to be a very, very fun group to watch. And it's going to be fun just to watch that battle with the offensive line and the defensive line. Again, we want to see a lot more stalemates than we want to see victories with those starters. Now on to the linebacking core. We kind of talked about, should Keenan Pili play? I don't know. I wouldn't mind him sitting out by any means, but I just want to see that group as a whole, okay, playing very fast, very physical. I think that the starters will end up being Keenan Pili and probably Jeremiah Thielander. But what does a guy like Jalen Smith give you? How does Caleb Perry look? Is he being more physical, right? Things like that. But you just want to see the players looking like they are playing fast, not a whole lot of false steps. You want them looking like they know what to do, where to go, filling those lanes, right? Okay, they want to, we want to see them getting into their run fits, great, taking on blocks either with, strength, power at the point of contact, or with speed, things like that. And, maybe making some plays. You want to see some guys maybe punching at that football, maybe get some interceptions. How do they look in pass coverage? Who looks the best in pass coverage? We'll be covering all of that type of stuff. And with the secondary, I want to see some very tight battles between them and the wide receivers. Okay, we got a lot more athletic inside of that room. And, I'm very much looking forward to seeing how do they match up versus some of the taller wide receivers versus some of the slot wide receivers. Do they have trouble with any of that? Are we going to be playing more man-to-man coverage? Is it going to be more zone coverage? Are we going to mix it up? How do they look blitzing? Things like that. And from that group, I think that the starters will more than likely be Jamar McCoy, Ricky Gibson at cornerback, at star Jordan Thomas. And at the safety, it's probably going to be Andre Turrentine right there with Kobe Thomas. And obviously, again, with that group, a whole lot of newcomers. So, who looks good? And maybe even if they're not new to this team, they may be new to being starters. So that's going to be big to see how they can kind of, perform under the lights in the first real, like live game situation of 2024. But also want to see them tackling well. That's something that I don't think we did a great job of last season. We want to see them wrapping up, having really good fundamentals from that perspective. Who's going to come out there and lay the wood? Now, you don't want to try to lay people out necessarily, but these guys are, well trained enough that they can go hit their teammates hard without injuring them. Like, what that strike zone is. So want to see that. Okay. Want to see some interceptions. Want to see some batted down balls, all that. Just really, really tight coverage, regardless of what the coverage is. And something that I didn't touch on with the linebackers, but I'll just touch on it right here briefly. Okay, I want to see this from the linebackers and from the secondary players, is being able to be in a good position to tackle the quarterbacks in open space. The linebackers didn't do a great job of this last season, and really our safeties didn't do a great job of it either. But since we got a lot more athletic, you would think that we can do that. It's going to be big playing in the SEC, really college football period. Almost everyone's quarterback can run at some point. We're going to get challenged, okay? We're going to get tested early on in our schedule with quarterbacks that are very, very mobile. So that's going to be pretty big for us to see. Obviously, okay, we can't hit our quarterbacks, but you just want to see them get in a good position, just to kind of, do like a fake little wrap up right next to the quarterback, okay? So looking forward to that. Now on to the offensive side of the football. We kind of talked about the secondary. Let's talk about the wide receivers. A lot of guys inside of that room that can straight up go. And I want to see them go to work. Okay. I want to see those guys making tough catches. I want to see them running good routes. How do they look getting off the line of scrimmage? Okay. Are these secondary guys going to come up to the line and be physical with them, which we hope that they will? How do they react versus some physicality at the line, whether it's a bigger player on the outside or whether it's one of the smaller slot types of guys? I want to see that release off of the line of scrimmage. I want them to be on the same page with their quarterbacks. I want to see that, if a throw is missed, it's not missed because we was in the wrong spot. That's really big in this offense because we run so many option routes that if we're not on the same page with the quarterbacks, the offense is not going to look good. Now, again, if we don't see that, it's no cause for concern because they've got all summer ball. Okay, summertime is where they're going to get a million reps in at this, and I can promise you they're going to be on the same page or they will not be playing. So definitely want to see that. Want to see, again, those tough catches. We are expecting for the coverage to be a lot tighter. So can they be those dogs, right? If they're getting kind of held some, and I would love to see our secondary guys hold them some. Let's see, right? Put them to the test. Something that we talked about last year, especially going up against Georgia. They're going to hold you. They're going to mug you. Will you fight through it? And will you continue to drive after their football? And will you make those tough catches? That's going to be huge. But Dante Thornton and Chris Brazzell, that's probably going to be the headliner for me as far as, who looks the best, because Dante is 6'5", about 225 pounds, whereas Chris Brazzell is 6'3", 6'4", very, very long, somewhere around 200 pounds. Different body types. I think that they have kind of, different skill sets, but we want to see who looks the best. And do they both look as confident as they've been talking so far throughout all the spring? That's going to be huge for me. Obviously, Mike Matthews, being a true freshman, you want to see him do what he has been doing so far. And I think he scored in almost every single scrimmage. I want to see him take it to the house. Okay, that's a Georgia boy, so we're very proud of him on this channel. But he's an absolute and total dog. You also want to see the wide receivers blocking well, okay? And I want to see our secondary guys, especially the cornerbacks, getting off of blocks, right? Didn't do a phenomenal job of that last season, but you just want to see overall physicality from all of these guys. It's going to be very, very important to me. Also, who's our deep threat? Okay, can we make catches across the middle of the field? Who's running the best routes? Things like that, okay? That means a lot. Now on to the tight ends. Okay, I would love to see Holden Stays go to work. I want to see his speed. I want to see his physicality as a blocker. That's really big in our offense. Same thing with Miles Kittelman. Can they be that safety blanket for whoever the quarterback is? Because I think that they'll all kind of get an opportunity to go with different quarterbacks. But, you know, how do those routes look? Are you boxing players out? Are you making those tough catches? Are you kind of running through that contact? Things like that. You know, how is the body control? Can you make those tough catches on the sideline, similar to what we saw Ethan Davis do last year? You want to see those types of things, and I believe that we will. I think we're going to be very, very impressed with that tight end room. Now on to the running backs. This is a group that we're watching very closely. Okay, we have to. How does Deshaun Bishop and Khalifa Keith look? Does Dylan Sampson even go? I say that he does not need to. Let those, you know, two backup guys get a lot more work. You know, we could say the same thing about Hunter Barnes and Patrick Wilk. They need to get that work. Let them get out there and get those reps. But the main thing that I want to see is that the players understand what they're supposed to do, especially with pass protection. Do you know where to slide? Are you picking up those blocks? Are you physical enough to do it? And also, just as far as running, you want to see them holding on to the football. No fumbles, running with good pad lean, right? Like you want to see them kind of leaning, falling forward. And we talked about it with especially Khalifa Keith. You want to see him finishing his runs very strong. He's a bigger body back, and he needs to play like it, right? Like we want to see that. He said that he can do it, but, Coach Sims said that he didn't know. That's another thing. With Coach Sims being new, how does his running back group look versus how we looked last season? Can we catch the football out of the backfield? That's what I'm looking for, okay? It's just all fundamentals, y'all. That's really all that I want to see from every single group. And moving on to the quarterbacks, we want to see Nico. We don't know how long that he's going to play, but if he does get to play the 6 to 7 series that we saw Joe Milton do last season, you want to see him looking very sharp, very crisp, very clean. You want to see him throwing from that pocket well. Hopefully he's got some time. But if he doesn't have time, you want to see him escaping to the correct size, and he does a great job of that. Just as far as extending plays and making great passes, very accurate passes on the run. We've heard a lot of insiders and experts talking about that. So want to see that from him. Again, kind of like we talked about with the wide receivers, you want to see that the quarterbacks are also on the same page with their wide receivers. And then the middle of the field, especially for Nico, we saw him throw the ball to the middle of the field some in the spring game last year. And we want to just see that he can continue to do that. I think that this entire offense will take a big step forward with him just because he can do that. Okay, so the entire field opens back up. It's not just outside throws, right? Like we're not just throwing the ball outside of those numbers. But yeah, so that's what I'm looking for out of Nico. And as far as Gaston Moore, you want to see him kind of operating the way that he did last year. I think that he was probably like the MVP of the orange and white game last year. He scored, I don't know, like 3 touchdowns, something like that. It seems like he scored on almost every single drive, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so want to see him just kind of build off of where he was last season. I want to kind of come away from this saying, okay, yeah, if he has to come in or, anything like that, we feel pretty confident in what he could do for this offense. And then with Jake Merklinger as a true freshman, this is his first, not real game, but, his first, kind of like real game setting inside of Neyland. How does he perform? I mean, he's looked really good throughout all the spring. Will he continue to show that in a real game situation? Quarterbacks need to be ballers. And whenever those lights are the brightest, that's when they need to be playing the best. We've seen that from Nico. Gaston Moore is actually kind of showing us that too. And the question is, can Jake Merklinger follow suit? That's going to be pretty big for me. And, I would love to hear what y'all's thoughts are on what y'all want to see from this orange and white game as well. But we're not done because we have got to touch on recruiting. So this list right here are the players that we are expecting to be coming up on campus tomorrow, or actually some of them today. And one of the players that is going to be up on campus today is David Sanders. And it sounds like he really is trending very heavily towards Tennessee. I just listened to a video yesterday with Steve Wilfong talking about, man, look, David Sanders is going to be up there with his family starting out on Friday. And I believe that he's going to be able to sit in on a class. So obviously what that tells you is he's taking Tennessee very, very seriously. And as we've kind of said over the past week or so, seems like he might be about done with this process. And if you're getting to the point where you're already wanting to sit in on classes, I think that he might, sit in on this class, come off of this visit if he likes it or if he doesn't, and sit down with his family. Maybe they'll pray about it. And he might have a decision. Okay, now I'm just purely speculating on that. I haven't heard that from anyone else. That's just the way that things are trending for me. He could end up waiting maybe a few more months. Maybe he wants to go visit somewhere else. I don't know, but I think that we're in a great position with David Sanders. Jalen Matthews, who is another five-star offensive tackle that is expected to be making a college decision, maybe like late May, early June, somewhere in that time frame. He's going to be up on campus too. And he's got Tennessee in his top 3. I think that we're in a really good spot with him. If he comes out of this visit impressed, some people have hinted towards he could end up committing this weekend. So how huge would it be to have two five-star offensive tackles commit like within 7 days of one another? I mean, or on the same weekend. I think that would be huge. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but it's something to look forward to. Something else that I want to see, just from this team is we have several visitors that are already committed to play for us. How do they look, right? Like, do they look any bigger? Do they look any thicker? Especially the players in the 2024 class. I want to see how they look out there on the sidelines or in the stands, things like that. See if they've been putting in work. Okay, that's something else for us to get very, very excited about. And outside of that, I just want for the crowd to be rocking, even though it's only going to be about 10,000 folks out there. I want it to be hyped up. I would love to hear from Coach Hype, speaking of hype. Just kind of hear what he has to say. I would love to hear from some of the other coaches on the staff as well. And I'm talking about during the game. We already know that we'll probably hear from them post-game. But that's pretty much it, okay? Those are my expectations in a nutshell. I hope that this video was not too long, and I'll try to make it as quick as possible because we are very, very excited for this. And P and I were, kind of going back and forth if we would have enough time to do a live stream tomorrow. I don't know that we will prior to the orange and white game, but maybe we can do one after it. My nephew, his son, Kason, he's got a big baseball tournament coming up tomorrow. So we are going to be, maybe even watching the orange and white game from his game. So thank y'all as always for sticking all the way to the end. And please keep a close eye out on the channel to see if we will be going live tomorrow or not. But that's going to be it for this one. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.